Welcome to our AI Unplugged Without Borders video podcast series, part of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. We're kicking off a new era of knowledge sharing with our move to video podcasts. Here, you will get to hear from experts in a more relaxed setting, diving into the nuts and bolts of deep tech and artificial intelligence. Today, we are talking about Cercle, an AI startup company focusing on healthcare for females. We really believe it's important to address some use cases to bring the real purpose of artificial intelligence closer to our audience. I'm very proud and honored to introduce two amazing people. Let me start with JC. JC was the co-founder and CEO of Vilix AI, which was acquired by Apple. He was the co-founder and CEO of Giggle Networks, acquired by Broadcom, and he was the CTO at DS2 Semiconductors, which was acquired by Marvell. He holds more than 100 patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning, signaling processing, and data science. Now, as you can see on his record, definitely somebody I would call a serial entrepreneur. Ashley is an experienced operator in big tech and startups. She led, for example, the operations for Meta's business messaging division and managed critical initiatives for Meta's C-suite. And she also reported to Meta's chief operating officer, which was Sheryl Sandberg. Now, she's run the business functions at Learning.org and consulted Fortune 500 companies at McKinsey and received her MBA from Wharton and BA from UC Berkeley. I am your host, Thomas Neubert, born and raised in Germany, a longtime entrepreneur, living in Silicon Valley still for over 33 years, and I'm the founder of Transatlantic AI Exchange. Please join me today to welcome two incredible people with an incredible use case and a very important problem to solve. Thank you very much. Good morning. Hi, JC. Hi, Ashley. I appreciate you joining our podcast series. And I want to welcome you to our session of the AI Unplugged Without Borders. Both of you are calling in via Zoom this time. It's not a live session. Ashley, I think you are one way up in the North Bay, right? Closer to Oakland. And JC, you are somewhere in Menlo Park, in the heart of Silicon Valley. So thank you very much, both of you. Today is a different podcast than some of the others, or most of the others that I have done so far, because I am really interesting for our audience to also throw in some real life use cases. And people normally can more associate to use cases in certain market segments, verticals, rather than always talk about, the macroeconomics and adoptions and all of that. So today is all about use cases. And in this particular case, I am even more excited to talk about healthcare. So with that note, maybe if I could start with JC, just a quick introduction, who you are and why did you start this exciting, interesting company, and why now?
First of all, thank you, Thomas, for having us here. It's a pleasure and an honor. To start here, I think there are two things. One is why healthcare, and second, why women health. Okay, so to answer the first one, I'm a data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. But I started working first with satellites and then communications networking, semiconductor space, very different, nothing even close to what we are doing now. My first startup that I co-founded with a few friends was acquired by Broadcom. So you are successful, good exit, everybody's happy. But 8 weeks after the closing of the deal, my father passed away due to an error on an emergency room. And my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 18 years old. And then after my father passed away, they moved it to severe bipolar disorder. So I've been dealing with the limitations with the healthcare since I was born. So that was kind of the first inflection point. So that's when I decided, okay, I need to use my skills for something better. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a biologist, so what I can do is to provide more data to the healthcare system so they can, to use real world data, real world evidence to make better outcomes, better drugs, low costs on getting those drugs to market through the clinical research organizations, enabling precise medicine. So it was a very clear vision. So the only thing is in 2011, 2012, everything was supervised learning. So we were starting to work on unsupervised self-learning, AI, weak supervised learning. All of those flavors were earlier than everyone else. But the idea was not text to text, image to image. The idea was to transform raw data into high quality data, those graphs, enabling graphs, to have the accuracy and the precision for that is required in healthcare. So we start working on that. We work on we started with media companies and with financial institutions. We were very successful, great team, awesome people. Apple came and obviously we were building something quite unique and they were very interested. They bought the company. And at the end of 2020, the deal was closed. And it was the second inflection point. Okay, I get introduced to Irene Cuevas in mid-21 to kind of a side project, help her to improve the selection of embryos. You have eggs, the sperm go together, then go to an incubator, and with cameras and using computer vision, you can improve the selection of the embryos. I thought that it was kind of a side project, to be honest, that will give it back for free. But doing that, we realized two things. One, that in order to improve IVF, you need to connect the hormone stimulation with the embryo selection, with the stimulation for the transfer, with the genetics. So you have to provide the Cercle, the 360 visibility. That's the name of the company in French. But second, that woman health is an area that is massively underserved. No, out of any medical study until 30 years ago, in the last 30 years, very little amount of data, low investment, less than 2%. The overall new treatments go to woman health. So if you combine those two things, you have the underserved market with more than 700 diseases that in average take more than 4 years and a half to have the right diagnosis versus anything that happens to us as a man. So for me, it was, okay, as a person that has built 2 companies, this is a massive underserved market with half of the population, that if we bring a little bit of data, because the main thing is lack of data, for clinics and the pharma, we can have a massive upside. Okay, so I thought it was a massive opportunity. On top of that, I have a daughter, very smart. She's probably going to go to college, and she's probably going to use some of those, egg freezing and all of those techniques. So it was very clear, as if I don't do anything here, I will be no different than the person that are basically ignoring woman health. So I answered the two: why health, why woman health, and I think there's a massive opportunity here.
Thanks for that very detailed background. I think what I like, my takeaway here is I really always like entrepreneurs, first of all, serial entrepreneurs, I have to say. So congratulations on some successful exits. But I think the biggest takeaway for me here is, by listening to you, that you were driven by real life experiences that you went through one way or the other. And that's actually a good motivator to start a company of some sort. And as this audience that we are serving here with the Transatlantic AI Exchange, or partial of it is entrepreneurship and startups, I would encourage everybody who is a startup or somebody still in the university at this point, and they are graduating very soon, to look around your own life, personal as well as surroundings, and look at problems that you run into and use that as a trigger and have an open mind to maybe, start a company in trying to solve that problem, whatever that problem may be. So thank you very much for that explanation. Now, Ashley, welcome as well. You also have a very interesting background. If you can introduce yourself a little bit. And then obviously my burning question is, you just recently joined this young startup company, and with all the options out there, what has intrigued you to actually join JC on his journey?
Sure. Well, thank you, Thomas, for having us and letting us share more about what we're building at Cercle. So my quick story is I'm an operator at heart. So I love like getting into the guts of a business and growing a business from the ground up. And I've spent the large majority of my career doing that across industries, but most recently over the last decade plus in tech. So big tech, I came from Meta. That was my last job where I worked in operations and strategy. And before that, I worked with Sheryl Sandberg, who's a big name in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure if everyone in the audience knows who she is, but she was the former COO of Meta, and an entrepreneur herself, has started her own foundation and is behind several companies, including Cercle. So Sheryl Sandberg is one of the largest investors in Cercle, and has been a mentor and force in my own career for the last decade, and introduced me to JC and this wonderful team and mission. And so I guess that's the first part of the answer is, when you're looking at amazing career opportunities, there's sort of the trifecta of mission, scope, and team. And for me, Cercle really checked all three of those boxes, starting with the team and JC and his amazing background as an entrepreneur, and the technologies that he's built have, I can brag about him in a way that he won't, but he's sold world-renowned AI and ML technologies to companies like Apple, right? And so when you're, as an operator, looking to join a startup, you're trying to find, those founders out there that really have a strong track record and have built technologies that have changed industries, which JC has done. But also there has to be like the personal connection to the mission. And for me, I went through 12 IVF cycles. For those listening who don't know what IVF is, that's in vitro fertilization. So it's assisted reproductive technology to help you have a family and grow a family. And the good news for me is I have 2 babies now that wouldn't be here if it weren't for modern medicine and IVF.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But, going through that very hard experience for 7 to 8 years, you get to experience firsthand what JC was talking about, which is like the dearth of data and the dearth of precision medicine, and how that impacts women like me. My condition, diminished ovarian reserve, should have been caught earlier, with the right predictors and the right data, and connecting the full circle, hence the name of the company, of my own health. And had there been an easier way, and I had fantastic doctors, this is not saying anything about my doctors, but they don't have the data readily available to look at the full circle of a woman's health. But had we looked at my genetic history with my lab test, with my medical history, it would have been much easier to predict earlier on in my life that this was going to be an issue in my 30s. So I would love for my daughter, right, to grow up in a world where the full circle of her health is all connected with powerful data, and that is enabling a precise roadmap for her own health. So it was the mission, it was the team, it was the scope of the role, all of that combined that brought me to Cercle.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for explaining your background with Meta and Sheryl Sandberg. Maybe for the listeners, I should clarify something so I'm not getting into, deep waters here with any of the listeners. But you said something, Ashley, that is, I think, very important for entrepreneurs to consider, but also for investors. And I know investors do that. And it's not just always about the money. Actually, it shouldn't be. It's more about the problem and the mission of the problem that's to be solved. But the other one you just pointed out are the people and the team itself. And for the record, I have to say, I met JC a while back, maybe over a year ago, for different reason, actually. We got introduced. And once in a while, you run into a person and you like, it clicks. It just absolutely clicks on a personal level. And I had that feeling from day one. And just full disclosure for the listeners, and I'm just sharing this and this session because of the passionate solution to a problem that is for real. And actually, you just put a personal face behind, these kind of problems. But I just should also just clarify, as soon as I heard that there are tractions with JC's mission here, I also put a little bit money into this organization because I just love the team and I love the solution or the problem that needed to be solved. So just full disclosure to the audience. This is not a paid advertisement. It's that we are all three super passionate about what you are trying to solve. So that's out of the way. You both mentioned the word data quite a bit in the introduction. And there will be, I would assume, a lot of listeners here that are trying to figure out what in the world does data has to do with what Ashley just went through and was able, to get. So in other words, what has been done until today, and what is this AI/data that actually seems to put this in a completely different dimension? If anybody wants to maybe dive a little bit deeper into it, maybe not towards the extent that an engineer needs to understand the code, but more about what data are we talking about and what does it do to actually be so helpful?
I can go, but I will make answer too much techie. I think it's better for the audience that probably Ashley summarize it. But before getting into that, I want to say something, okay, just to complete first of all, thank you for investing in the company. But second, I think both of you say something very important. And I will encourage every person that is listening here. So if there is an outcome that you can get out of this on top of how great we are building solutions, the data, and so on, and you will see that we'll get into the details. I think one thing that you should get is, I will encourage everybody to stop complaining and take the action. What I really like from all the investors is, we raise money, individual investors. I really like that, there are people complaining about the problem, but they took the step further to, do something, okay? So and I think it's something that we should do a lot in general in our lives. So less complaining, and if there is a problem, trying to fix it, okay? And it works in the startups, and I think those are the real projects where people find problems and do something to fix them. And it can be taking, joining the company like Ashley did, and other, the team here is amazing. But also as an investor, we are very proud of the whole community investors, and I want to say thank you to all of them. Having said that, otherwise I will get into very technical answer here. So I think it's better for everybody that Ashley take that answer.
Why don't you start on a 35,000 foot level, and if we have to on a ground level, then JC can put some more details behind it if needed.
So zooming way out, I think as entrepreneurs, and we see this dynamic in Silicon Valley a lot, where is the entrepreneur building a technology that's chasing a problem and looking for the problem, or is there a root cause problem that's super clear and they've built the technology to address that? And sort of analyzing that as an entrepreneur is really important. And for us, the problem is super clear. So we want to get closer to precision medicine because we want people to live healthier, longer, happier lives. So in order to improve health outcomes and get to precision medicine, you need to unlock healthcare data. So what do we mean by that? 80% of healthcare data is unstructured and inaccessible. So there's a lot of data out there that can help solve some of the toughest problems in healthcare, but it's not being used. It's inaccessible. It's unstructured. It's a complete mess. And so that's the problem. And the solution, what JC and our engineers have built, is an AI agent that interprets and understands healthcare, specifically women's healthcare data at scale. That's the big picture. So we have a clear problem of messy, unstructured data that's not properly being used. The solution is a very complex data instrument. It's called a graph, a heterogeneous graph that JC and our engineers have built to really merge and interpret any type of data. It could be an X-ray, it could be a lab test, it could be raw data from an EMR, electronic medical record system, which I know we've all dealt with as patients. So it's any type of data gets ingested into our AI agent, and it gets interpreted and transformed so that doctors and the healthcare system can actually use the data. That's it in a nutshell.
So maybe one particular explanation is needed, because I know when I got introduced to that term years ago, it took me a while to grasp. Explain. I mean, data, for most people, data is, numbers, bits and bytes, zeros and ones, an Excel sheet, stuff like that. A graph is something completely different. Mm-hmm. Just maybe quickly explain what is the fundamental definition of a graph.
The raw data. That's a JC question.
Yeah. The graph is just a way to represent information or knowledge. Okay, so you have nodes, okay, points into the graph. That could be, medications, it could be infertility causes, it could be specific treatments, it could be something specific, and then how that knowledge is related. Okay, so that treatment has been taken by this particular patient in this particular date, and it's part of the hormone stimulation treatment. Okay, so you want to capture the knowledge and information, and those are the nodes. And then you want to capture how that knowledge is related to each other, and those are the links. Okay, so you have two nodes and then a relationship. Okay, and you can see a graph like points and lines that are connected, and it's a very visual representation. Another way to see this is, the stars on the sky. Okay, so you look at the sky and you have full of stars. Every star is a point on the constellation, but then you can connect those stars. Okay, so a new patient is nothing else than another star on your constellation, and based on the nodes around that star, you can compare that patient with another patient and another patient and another patient, and you can transform a problem that is tables and relational databases into something that is even very visual. So you can use techniques of deep learning, okay, with all the flavors to compare different patients, to compare different treatments, and it's very visual. And let me put an example here. Okay, so you can go to a clinic and you can get a specific treatment, hormone stimulation for your egg retrieval for egg freezing. Depending on the brand of that treatment, you may have different compositions of those drugs. Also, the doctor may put different notes on the description of your medical records. Okay, so if you want to compare that patient, how you compare, because they are maybe using different brands on the medication, slightly different, percentage of the different components of the medication. You need to understand the notes of the doctor. You need to understand really what are the different infertility causes, if there is any, hormone levels. You can go up to the details of the genetics, the different mutations to enable precision medicine. And then you have to project that into that constellation of points, in the graph. So you can have one constellation and another constellation and see, okay, those are similar or not similar. Okay, so that's kind of in a highly simplification of that. So we are trying to be able to transform something that it's very difficult to merge and understand into a graph. And the last point is our brain works with neurons, and those neurons are nodes into a graph that are connected. Okay, LLMs are graphs. They have nodes and connections. Anything on machine learning is based on the graph. The difference is the graph that we are building is 100% accurate. Okay, there is no hallucination. There is no, something, because we are building something that needs 100% accuracy, and it has transparency. So the doctors and the pharma, everybody knows at any moment in time what are the reason behind anything, any prediction. They have full traceability. They can go and see full transparency, full visibility. It's a must. It's a requirement in order to healthcare do their job. Okay, that's
okay.
Trying to be very simple.
So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of data, different kind of data, that will end up into a certain graph. And then obviously within the AI terms, again, for people who are not that familiar, there's machine learning for a long, long time. Then there are neural networks, and there's artificial intelligence and the compute and all of that. And what I'm hearing is there's a bunch of information out there that's being put together like in a neural network, and then you run some AI on top of it. But this is all data, which means I would conclude that you can actually apply this then to other medical problems, not just the ones that you are currently chasing.
Yes, but I would say that woman health is, you are talking about half of the population and they need data. Okay, so for example, something very simple, like, okay, I'm getting this hormone stimulation. I'm talking about fertility, but it could be for any problem of woman health. Okay, so right now doctors, they have to use kind of memory. So selecting a hormone stimulation protocol to or extract eggs for egg freezing or for IVF or anything. They don't have tools to understand, okay, for that particular woman with the history and the medical records, even the DNA, what is the best hormone stimulation protocol? Not to extract the maximum number of eggs, because that's something that in the memory of the doctor is much easier. Okay, so because you provide the protocol, in a few weeks later you extract the eggs and you more or less know which protocol has higher number of eggs or not. Memory, it works. But if you are asking the doctor, okay, tell me which is a protocol that is going to maximize my chances to have a successful baby, it's egg retrieval, IVF, and then the pregnancy until the end. That's something that they don't have. They don't process. It's way too much. In the constellation of points, you have to connect too many points. you go too deep. So we are trying to address that in a very simple way, and it doesn't exist today in any other way, because if you go to ChatGPT and you're asking, okay, tell me why you have provided me that answer, they don't know, and they cannot merge. So the idea is really understanding that all of those medications, even if they have different names, they are the same. Something as simple as that is not that simple. So sometimes the different doctors, they mention, or they put different names, but they're talking about the same thing. Solving all of those small things, you have to do that in order that then you can complete the puzzle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So fast forward then, based on what Ashley said earlier with your own real life experience, what is at the moment your claim of fame? I know this is all new, it's a startup company, but looking 3 to 5 years out, what is the claim of fame for your solution in regards to cost savings, money saving, time saving, less pain for a woman who goes through these things? How do you measure the success for an individual human female when this is all up and running?
I think there's two things. I think there's claim to fame with the technology, and then there's claim to fame with our customers in the market. I think on the technology side, I won't belabor that because I think JC's covered it at length, but there really is, and you asked a question, which is, well, so you've built a technology that's really agnostic. It can work in all sorts of contexts. And the answer is yes. In theory, it can interpret any type of data. But for entrepreneurs listening, it's not just when you're building a business, you have to look at the technology and the unique IP, but also the market. Yeah. And we deeply believe that this is the market that is best fit for the technology that we've built because it's underserved. And there is no other competitor out there that has built a graph, which is really a map of this scale for women's health. So it's the technology and it's the market. And 5 years from now, we have spent so much, really the last 3 years with our entire engineering team, building this graph from the ground up with some major players in women's healthcare. So we're differentiated both with the unique IP of the technology, but also the scale of our data set. We have 2 million women in our database with up to 1,000 data points per patient. So scale and resolution that's really differentiated in the market. And then on the customer and the market side, 5 years from now, and we're already starting to see this. So even 12 months from now, our customers, we're launching one of a product called it's a predictor tool essentially that we're working on with one of our customers that will be launched to doctors across their network, and it's going to enable patients like me. I mentioned my story at the top of the call, to really have a precise path to becoming a parent in a way that's not available now. So it's much more precision on what you can expect with treatment, what you can expect with medicine. And I think female patients that are working with the doctors in our network are going to just feel so much more informed with real data on what their path and most optimal treatment is. And that's not even going to take 5 years. That's happening now. The other use case you talked about ROI is from a business perspective. So the graph and all of this stuff that we're talking about at the intersection of healthcare and data, yes, there's a ton that we can do for patients and precision medicine, but there's also a lot we can do for businesses. You can use predictive analysis in the graph to figure out what subset of customers are most likely to convert from calling a call center to coming into the office to actually converting to treatment. We can do very, very predictive and precise analytics on customer journey mapping, on pricing analysis. So based on the graph and all the data in the graph, what is the risk profile of a given patient? And therefore, how should we price a treatment accordingly based on the risk profile? So I think it's, again, as you're building a business and you're thinking about the go-to-market, we think about different segments of customers. So there's an application of the graph for doctors who are patient facing. There's an application of the graph for the business. How do we increase EBITDA and drive customer conversion? And then there's also a major application, which we're happy to talk more about, within pharmaceuticals and the clinical trial space as well.
So looking forward, what are the biggest barriers at the moment in regards to go-to-market, reaching the customers ultimately? And what kind of people would you like to reach out to? And in other words, if there's an audience, not just investors are always welcome to knock on the door, but in general, potential customers, channel partners, end users, maybe beta testers, if I can call it that way. What kind of people would you like reaching out to you? And again, what's the biggest barriers that you see over the next 24 months in regards to go-to-market?
I think that some of the barriers, and JC can pile on, but from my go-to-market perspective, I mean, we always welcome interest from investors, of course, but I think on the customer side, we're really doing a lot of market research on how to reach pharmaceutical companies, because we know, just based on the data, that the drug pipeline for women's health is growing, which is great because we're half of the population and we've been 1% of the investment for way too long. So we're starting to see the tides shift toward more investment in women's health and the drug pipeline, which is great. But as everyone knows, in order to take a drug to market, you have to run clinical trials. And women couldn't even participate in clinical trials until the 90s. And now we are participating in trials, but we're underrepresented in trials. So we're more likely to die from a heart attack than men are, but we're underrepresented in clinical trials for heart drugs. So, wow. So there is a real opportunity for Cercle to come in and help match the supply and demand for these clinical trials, and actually act as the conduit between pharma and patients. And so that is both a challenge in terms of building the go-to-market motion to do that, but a huge, huge opportunity for the business, and one that we're really excited about.
Interesting. Thank you. Maybe in closing, both of you, actually, JC, you have anything that you want to add? You have this look like I want to add something.
No, because she did a great job explaining it. I will just include because it's not a barrier, but I think we know that we have to go step by step. Okay, I always use this word, step by step, because the most important thing here, I think, is building the trust. Okay, so to execute that beautiful vision that Ashley just described, okay, so we need to build the trust. We are kind of connecting different sites here through the data, and data in healthcare, it has something that is very important, is privacy. Okay, we are HIPAA compliant. We need to do that respecting the privacy of the patient. Okay, so that's first and most important. So we don't ingest any API into the graph. And second, you need to respect the different, I won't call business, but who owns the proprietary of the data. Clinics have their own data, pharma, and so on. So we want to connect them, so the insights that right now are very expensive and very difficult to extract, we want to make that super simple. But at the end, we want to connect both things. So whoever owns the data, there is a business plan and business model. So they get clinics are thinking, hey, I keep my data because I feel that I own it, and they own it, and they deserve to, if there is any business, they should earn it, and it should be very clear how the business model between the data owners and the users or the buyers of the data. So I think we can play a big role there, but it has to be based on trust. Okay, so they will trust all the parties with their data, and if we do a very good job connecting that supply and demand. And I think the key factor is building the trust. We are big believers on that, and everything we do is with that mission of building the trust from our customers, building the trust from the patients, building the trust from everybody. And I think it's worth, because if we do a good job, I'm pretty sure, those 700 diseases that I mentioned at the beginning will be reduced. So we are going to reduce the time to the right diagnosis. We are going to improve the amount of investment on woman health, and we will create that tsunami that data can do to really improve woman health in a significant way, not just infertility.
Okay. I think that's a perfect closing. I would assume to the listeners, you have a website where people can read about more information, and if they're interested, they can obviously get in contact with you. So I am really grateful that you both took the time for this short interview. I hope we inspired some people out there to look around of problems that they may see. And JC, you said it, right? Don't just sit there and complain, do something about it. And maybe, somebody got triggered with your feedback here to actually start a company based on a problem and then trying to solve it. So with that, I wanted to thank both of you again. And hopefully we can do this in a few months from now and then see how the traction is going to be. So both of you, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Really, really grateful.